Here's a friend who managed Merrill Lynch for years sent this to me the other day. He said, here's my metaphor for the American economy and Wall Street now. You'll see the airplane has hit the tree, and if you can read this down below, it says, American aviation, learn to fly here. The credit crisis, I believe, is a tale of two religions. I've been trying to convince people of this for 15 years. Nobody, and I mean nobody, has paid any attention to me. This is a stamp, U.S. government. I want you to imagine the outcry if the U.S. government made a stamp of Jesus Christ. Okay? But Ayn Rand would proudly, I'm not being critical here, I want you to understand it. Ayn Rand would proudly claim the title of the Antichrist. We go looking all over the world, imagining all sorts of Antichrists, from Saddam Hussein to Obama himself. And this lady has been running the American economy for 15 years and was in the front row of the White House when Alan Greenspan was sworn in, proudly claims the title of the Antichrist, and we pay no attention to her whatsoever. Okay? The government honors her. Here's what she has said, some of her beliefs. I believe in complete, laissez-faire, full, unregulated capitalism. Not just unregulated by government, unregulated by Judeo-Christian morality. She used to run ads in major magazines. We're going to create a community that not only does not have any government, but has no religion. And you guys just go out and try to make all the money you can and everything's going to be wonderful. She was a utopianist, a secular utopianist, just like Karl Marx was on the other end of the political spectrum. I wrote this article for Stewardship Journal in the winter of 1998, in which I compare her to, remember the prophets of Baal that Elijah debated on Mount Carmel? Baal, you should know, was a symbol of future enough, as Greenspan has been to the American people, and particularly Wall Street, for many years. And in my next hour, I want you to think of me as dressed up like Elijah. I'm not a prophet, but I'm an actor portraying Elijah, and we're going to debate the prophets of Baal, if you will, okay? Because I think there is nothing, this may be even more serious threat to the Judeo-Christian faith than what the prophets of Baal were. John Bogle, founder of Vanguard, just wrote a new book called Enough. This is on the first page. I want you to read it with me. The people who created this country built a moral structure around money. The Puritan legacy inhibited luxury and self-indulgence. For centuries, it remained industrious, ambitious, and frugal. Over the past 30 years, much of that has been shredded. The country's moral guardians, listen to this, are forever looking out for decadence out of Hollywood and reality TV. But the most rampant decadence today is financial decadence, the trampling of decent norms about how to use and harness money. When I went to college in 1968, more of us said, there was a survey of incoming freshmen, that we wanted to develop a meaningful philosophy of life right here. See how high that was? Remember the flower power years? Cole, you'll remember this. Remember everybody wanted to save the world, peace and love and all that kind of stuff? And then it didn't work because of Vietnam, Watergate, and all that kind of stuff. So basically we decided, well, shoot, if we can't save the world, we may as well make a buck. And all of a sudden, beginning in the early 70s, the number of people who wanted to make a buck began to outnumber drastically those who wanted to develop a meaningful philosophy of life. That's what happened. Now, there was a philosopher who particularly appealed to us. Bill was just telling me, I mentioned Ayn Rand, that he read her books twice in college and remembers it all and studied it. I have to tell you, I actually have a brother-in-law who's ultra-conservative who has taught her some of her stuff in a Christian church as Christianity, okay? And the reason is, she said, in essence, she believed in personal responsibility, we call it, okay? Which is a good thing. Christianity teaches that, okay? What she did not believe in is the love thy neighbor part, the social responsibility, okay? And he believes in personal responsibility. Her works have been described as a glass of freshly squeezed juice that's been laced with a lethal dose of strychnine, okay? It's a pretty good way of looking at it. Here's what an admirer, I pulled out a book advertisement for her the other day. An admirer wrote this. She said she was a brilliant personality who suffered terrible depression. Rand was a prickly pear who became more difficult to work with. She wouldn't tolerate criticism and denounced admirers. Rand antagonized almost all her friends, and by the time she died, just 2 or 3 were left. Many people still have bad feelings about Rand and Nathaniel Branden. Nathaniel was her assistant, with which she had a very open affair. Being purely rational people, they told their spouses that they wanted to have an affair on Thursday afternoon and asked them, please leave the room. And they would had their affair for years. Interestingly enough, Nathaniel decided that he wanted to have an affair with someone else. And Rand promptly excommunicated him from the group. Okay, that sounds unfair, right? Well, fairness is not a value of objectivism, okay? It's selfishness. And wouldn't it be selfish for Rand to say that you can't have an affair even though I'm having an affair with you despite knowing your wife? That's the logic that exists in this philosopher's mind. Sounds very, very weird, except you need to understand this. Most people would reject that kind of philosophy out of hand. They don't know much about it. If you go to Amazon.com, punch in the words 10 most influential books, here's what you're going to get. Number 1 is the Holy Bible. Okay? Number 2 is Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, the second most influential book in America. This is a metaphor for America, guys. Okay? It's exactly what I live with in my life on Wall Street and in America. Interesting thing about that, Martin Marty, Atlas Shrugged's 50 years old, not too long ago. Martin Marty, the religious historian at the University of Chicago, wrote a full page and said basically that the irony of that is Atlas Shrugged denounced every line of the Bible. So we got one about the Bible, another one that's denouncing it for Monday to Friday life. Rand wrote in a letter to a friend, we will get a book called Selfishness is a Virtue, by the way. That's the key point. Selfishness is a virtue. That was her economic commentary on Atlas Shrugged. Said, we will give people a faith, a positive, clear, and consistent system of belief. One thing I admire about Rand, she said, you will not mix my faith with that of any other religion. Every religious philosopher teaches that, okay? Jesus did. You know, the ancient prophets were always railing about syncretism. They weren't railing to the atheist about their atheism. They were talking to God's people about you're mixing our faith with that of Baal. That's what always creates confusion in a culture, okay? And she didn't want it either. Her people, by the way, are very, very good at adhering to that. One of the things she told Playboy is my views on charity are very simple. I do not consider it a major virtue, and above all, I do not consider it a moral duty. You may remember when Colin Powell had the President's Summit on Philanthropy in Philadelphia a few years ago, objectivists, which is what she called her disciples, actively protested it with signs that said, read Atlas Shrugged, if you can imagine protesting a conference on volunteerism.